how to stick with writing a book, how to have that tenacity and persistence. I'm answering this question because I have stuck with writing a book for a decade, and it's because for me, I had a question going in my head that I wanted to just have answered in the process of writing. And that question is, what's up with me? What's wrong with me? And why can't I just be fitting in with other people and thinking a certain way, right? That's kind of the, and why is it that these things I'm worried about, how about if I try to articulate my view and let me see if I'll get some clarity on it. And so for me, what drove it is a process of discovery, the curiosity, the self-awareness of trying to figure out what I can be aware of and how, like, is it just me? And I think that is kind of the driving question of a writer who wants to have the readers be like, you're not alone. I felt that way too. Thanks for articulating this, because now I don't feel so alone in the world. And so when people talk about, how do you finish a novel? How do you stick with it? I'd say it has to have that level of burning, trying to figure something out within yourself. It has to have that those internal stakes. Because if you're just writing because for some reason you want to be a writer, because it sounds exciting and you think, I'm pretty good at it and I'd like to finish a book because then I could be published and be on book tours, or I don't know, if you're thinking of it that way, it's almost like you're in that kind of, you're caught up in the rewards of that and thinking that it'll mean something and thinking it is going to be this kind of glowing heaven to you. And that's the same way that people approach a lot of things with success and milestones, is thinking that after is going to be glorious. And I would say you have to have a little bit of almost masochism and tortured persistence to write a book, because you have to have such a willingness to confront yourself, and that's not always fun. That's not ever fun, because we do anything to avoid ourselves. But when we write a book, you're committed to realizing things. Like, even though it's characters, even if it's complete fantasy or sci-fi, you're confronting something within you that is just, sometimes that's why there's a resistance. That's why that's why you're not able to keep writing. There's people that talk about writer's block and procrastination. It's because there's a resistance to even seeing yourself and keeping with that. And there's a resistance to when you're in that process, even though it's such a strange thing, because initially you're just trying to get out of your own way, and then you're into your subconscious instead of that conscious brain that has the judge that's like, oh, why even bother? Oh, that's horrible. That's a horrible first sentence. That's a horrible second. That judge. And so the thing about writing is making it a habit and committing to that flow state, or committing to that habit. You get into a flow state, and then you start to be addicted to it. But then you go through still weird cycles of resistance even within that. And so to keep with something in order to finish it, what I recommend is you have to be in a constant writing workshop, because that gives you accountability to finish chapters, because you'll get addicted to the cycle of going in and getting what people think and then being able to revise based on that. Another thing, if you can't be in a writing workshop, and if you have money to do so, pay a writing coach, because a writing coach gives you that same accountability. And in some ways, that one-on-one can really be an intensive process that keeps you fired up to completion. For me, the reason that I kept working on it was I had this burning question to figure out. And in a way, at first, my first draft was a little bit of me pretending to myself I was a certain way. And then my next few drafts were, pointing fingers at the world. How dare the world be against me? The world's against me. And then I had the next draft was a clarity of my own part in how the character's misbelief is contributing to it, but also there was a lot of making the person that I blamed everything on just as much of a dimensional character. So in a way, each draft was kind of showing that process we go through in life, which is eventually we get to the point of self-responsibility and realizing how we are contributing to a lot of our problems and the arcs in our lives and how we contribute, but also owning up to the injustice of other aspects happening. But it's interesting because then as I attained more of that, the book got better because it wasn't so like hero and villain and oh poor me, and it wasn't so much posturing. So it got more and more authentic and more real and more interesting because it had two-dimensional characters coming together that both had their masks drop and both had both things that we love and things that we cringe at. And so what got me in an interesting way, I grew up by writing that and I was driven to finish it because I was driven to keep evolving myself, right? If you get stuck in life with self-development, I don't think you're not able to get through the arc because you're not able to get it out of that middle portion of a novel, which is when the character has to get some clarity and having this epiphany about how whatever they have as a misbelief or a limited belief is continually getting in their way. And then as they get more of awareness, they're able to tackle, and this is in comedy, this is in tragedy, this is in coming of age, this is in even thrillers. There's an element, because even in thrillers, the detective is going to get to the point of no return where their assumptions are wrong and there's a twist. I mean, so with everything, it really relies on us having that ability to be wrong and to kind of suddenly, and then in tragedy, sometimes maybe you never figure out that you're wrong. But, so how do you get through a book? Yes, there's I'm giving this response that's kind of maybe really broad about you've got to have that burning question in you and that commitment to be changing and confronting yourself. And then of course there's being in workshops, having book coaches. Another thing that honestly is going to help you finish is you have to be kind of angry. You have to have this motivating force that you're angry that when you see other books out that maybe you have to really root for your story to be out there. And maybe anger isn't the word, but you have to be righteous. You have to be like a sense of, I deserve to get my story out. Look, I love my story. You got to advocate for yourself. You've got to get to the point where you think, I love my story. It's something that adds to the conversation and that I would like my younger self to know, or this is a story that I'd like people that I know would entertain people, and just have that complete belief. And because if you're still in the phase of hoping that someone will take it and being kind of like, well, I wrote a thing. Whenever someone says I wrote a thing, does anyone want to read that? I mean, it's just this weird fake humility. And just have that advocacy, because you've got to be able to pitch it in a way that's showing that you're excited to tell the story and that you know exactly what the story is. And so it's hard though. The persistence requires a lot. It requires also this, you've got to get to the point where you are able to take that exposure of being published, and because writing the book is one thing. Once some of the resistance to finishing that as actually a fear of it being published. And we might consciously say we want it published and we want that, but on another level, we would want to hide and cry to see like reviews or to have exposure or to feel like our privacy and then you have to remember, authors are not that exposed. Like you're going to be okay. I mean, yes, sometimes maybe you'll go on the internet and you'll see things, but everything will blow over. There's always someone that like people might rat on, but you've got to toughen up for that cycle of it, that cycle of exposure, and you've got to realize that people really aren't thinking about you and that nearly as much as you might imagine when you're younger. Like nobody is going to even know that it's published, and the few people that do are going to be people that wish they had written a book. They're going to be keeping an eye on you. Or people that have half-written books, or people that have books that aren't published. They're going to be the main people that notice you have a book out. Everybody else is going to just be like completely apathetic. And then there's going to be the people that read it and like it, and that's, again, it's a product. They consumed it, they liked it. It's not a personal thing that they're obsessed with you, you know? And so you have to have that reassurance and then if your family, if it's out, and I mean, again, with them, it's like you have to just say, sorry, you know, this is a fictional book, and this is humorous, this, don't read it, you know. Just have the confidence to assert that it's good and to tell the people that in your family not to read it, and to keep carrying on, because the more you make it a habit that's so entrenched in you, the more you'll be in flow state and really enjoying it, and you'll know why you love to write. So that's my advice on how to finish a book that sometimes you've been working on for a decade or longer.